So I have with me Nick Edwards, the co-host of the True Crime Garage podcast, and he does that podcast with his partner and friend of my YouTube channel, The Captain. And Nick is the author of the book, The Delphi Murders, The Quest to Find the Man on the Bridge. Nick, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Fig, for having me on. It's we've become fast friends recently, huh? With you've been sending me stuff for quite some time on Delphi, and I've been reading everything you're putting together there. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. And your viewers will be interested to know that we are having you on True Crime Garage, on our other show, Off the Record, as well, which is a subscription show that we've relaunched, and we're very excited that that's back and up and running, and very excited to have you on as well. You know, like in college football, they do a 1-and-1. Well,
Right.
Fig, True Crime Garage, we just did a 1-and-1, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited. I'm honored to really be on that show, because you guys are how I learned about Delphi, and people are familiar with my cousin's case, and you guys covered that. And me searching my cousin's name, I found you guys. Mm-hmm. And I think I emailed you back then, like, hey, thank you for covering my cousin's case in the way that you did, respectful. You did the research, because like any big case, there's some bad actors out there that were just saying some crazy things for attention, but you guys cover it the right way. So you've always been my go-to when I'm interested in a cold case. And it's pretty cool for listening to you guys. And hey, now I'm talking to you. So that's kind of awesome for me. But yeah, definitely the Delphi case is what I heard from you guys, and it was super intriguing. And I didn't know what it was, but as you guys are my go-to, I got a lot of information, a lot of factual information that really helped me understand. And this case was intriguing. So I want to ask you, out of all the cases you guys cover, because I looked, you guys almost have close to 700 episodes already. So why, out of all the cases that you guys covered, what really stuck out about this one that compelled you to write a book?
Well, and I wish that you know, we've done about 670 episodes on True Crime Garage. We've done well over 100 of Off the Record episodes as well. And I wish that those numbers easily translated into exactly how many cases we've covered. But because some cases we devote a single episode or 2 episodes, or sometimes 4 or 6, that math is not so easy. But yeah, you're right. This case, you know, we have this set up on True Crime Garage where typically we're moving on to the next case every week. And while that is great for the show, it's also very difficult on us every week to hit the reset button and walk into parts unknown and on a new adventure that we know nothing about going into it. So why this case and not a whole bunch of the others? Well, this is one, and I'm not going to say it's the only one, but this case is one of those cases that I got an obsession with. And I think that that's something that people can easily comprehend, because so many other people have developed an obsession with this case. And when we cover some of these cases that really kind of get to me and stick with me, I can't, some of them I can't let go. And this is one that I couldn't let go for 5 years. And so it was one of those things that, not just to satisfy my own curiosities, because with this case, we kept covering it on True Crime Garage. We kept going back to it anytime there was new information. And sometimes we'd come up with episodes when there was no new information. But this case is different in the sense that when you look at this case on the surface, right, the surface information tells you, oh my goodness, they have so much. They have the guy's picture, they have the audio of the guy talking, they have a video of the guy walking on the bridge. They have so much in this investigation. And then we learn that really, no, they don't. They don't have, or at least they're not telling us anything. So the gap between that information on the surface, this case, the way it looks on the surface, compared to what the case actually is as far as the investigation goes, I needed to fill that gap for myself. And I think that's been good and bad for the case. It was good for my book, because what I'm doing is, you've read it and you know that a good portion of the book is me kind of investigating or observing the investigation itself. Less the crime and more the investigation. What do they know? Why are they doing this with the investigation? Why did they say these words? Why are they acting this way? Why did they release 2 composite sketches? And taking what I've learned from the hundreds of cases that we've covered and researched on True Crime Garage and applying it to this one single case. And the flip side of that was other people online filling in the gaps themselves and filling in the blanks themselves. Some of it with some pretty disrespectful stuff toward the families and the people, the good people of Delphi and the law enforcement officers that were working this case. And so I wanted a way to tell this story. It is a big story. It's a national story. And I wanted to tell it the way that I saw it in a respectful manner, and try to document something from almost start to finish.
And that's why you're such a helpful resource, because you've covered all these cases, a few hundred. So I could look at the case and I'm like, oh my God, this just happened, because I'm only really looking at Delphi. And you're like, oh no, that happens in this situation, it's not as uncommon as you think. Like, oh, okay. Or the vice versa, like, hey, this never happened. So I really appreciate to be able to lean on you with your experience of all the cases, so you're able to see different habits and different things that happen. So it helps keep me grounded a little bit as well. And before we get too far, today's the official book release date. May 23rd is the official one, but it's kind of been released, prior to that, right?
I was told that in the business is called a soft release.
Okay.
And yeah, you're right. Today is the official release date, and I was unaware of the soft release date originally, but so I anticipated this night being celebrated with nice glass of bourbon, maybe some red wine, and a cigar to celebrate the arrival of. It's been a life goal of mine to write a book, and specifically a true crime book. And so this is really kind of a milestone for me personally, and something that I set out to achieve. So yeah, today's a good day for celebration for me. And I appreciate you having me on to talk about the Delphi murders, the quest to find the man on the bridge.
Yeah. And I'm going to put the link to the Amazon site where you could purchase it. And I'll link True Crime Garage as well, so people will be able to purchase that. I have the audio book, the ebook, and the hard copy book. So it's pretty awesome. It's a good read. So let's talk about a little bit. So to me, I like how it's chronological, and takes you down kind of memory lane of how the case happened. And it's a good way of going about it, because in real time, what we have is, like in 2022, there was a transcript released from 2020. So it's very confusing to people. They're thinking that's new information, not realizing the investigators have had this for over a year and a half. They've already done this interview. When the Ron Logan PCA was released, well, that was years and years after, but people have a hard time putting it back into the timeline and looking at the investigation holistically. So I think they get confused. So what I appreciate so much about your book is it really walks us through the timeline. So for people who are maybe confused about things, because it is a confusing case. There's so many elements to it. It's really helpful. I think it's anyone who knows Delphi, they need this book to kind of ground them.
Well, and the book is weird too, and I wanted to tell it in a very kind of different way. So the one of the comments that I get for people that don't know of True Crime Garage, that haven't listened to the show, don't know of my work, but the one comment that I get often is the title, The Delphi Murders, The Quest to Find the Man on the Bridge. And people were like, you do know they arrested somebody. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware of that. But the way that I wrote the book was in real time. And rather than trying to come up with a clever way of describing it, I'll just read the foreword, which explains and this is something that I ask the reader to keep in mind throughout the pages of the book, because it's written in we've covered it so many times on True Crime Garage. I was able to go back, and I had saved all my notes from all that time. So I was able to go back and relive those moments of when I first learned of a certain aspect of the investigation, or when a certain piece of evidence was released to the public, and the way that I felt about it, and my notes and thoughts of it at the time. So I'm telling the story in real time as I kind of lived it and watched it from afar, watched the investigation unfold from afar. And the forward reads, portions of this book were written in real time before the arrest of Richard Allen. This murder investigation was nearly 6 years active before charges were filed. Here in these pages, you will find the timeline, the facts, and one man's thoughts, observations, and obsessions with an American murder investigation. And oftentimes, that's part of the reason. My biggest fascination a lot of times with true crime, Fig, is that not the gore, not the salacious details, none of that. To me, it's always the investigations. Why are they doing the police strategies, and why are they doing this? And here's where I think they kind of bumbled this investigation, or what did they do right? What worked in other cases that have similar characteristics, and how can that be applied? How can those strategies and what we learned from those cases be applied to an unsolved case? And that's something, as a longtime listener, True Crime Garage, we're constantly doing every week when we take a look at a new case. So when you read this book, when your viewers read this book, they're along for a journey, for a 5.5, 6 year journey from start to finish, the way that this case unfolded. And we sit here, yeah, there's an arrest, but there's still a lot left to be done with this investigation.
Yeah. So thanks for kind of describing the process and getting the insight. And yeah, your father was in law enforcement, correct? So that kind of got you interested a little bit.
Yeah, he's a retired detective from a suburb in the greater Columbus area here in Central Ohio. And so he's worked all kinds of cases, and he's worked homicides, robberies, things of that nature. And I don't know how it works in every police department, but in his police department, the way that it worked is the detectives each had their specialties, if you will, the types of crimes that they were schooled in investigating and had more experience than the other detectives in the room. But you were on call back then. You were on call for about 2 weeks at a time. And so if you would catch a case, if you were on call and got called in to investigate whatever it is that happened, that was now your case. And so you could have your specialty, your area of expertise, but if it happened on your watch, that was going to be your case. So he's investigated all kinds of stuff. And it's weird because people immediately assume that me and my father are having weekly conversations about these cases, every single one of them. And look, the guy's done his time. He's retired. He doesn't want to be, looking at these types of cases every week. So once in a while, you don't want to go to the well too many times. So I pick and choose when it is something that I want to bring to his attention. And one thing that fascinates me about those conversations when we do have them is he does always pick up on something. Like he will always have an idea for a lead in an area, in a realm of the case that I didn't even think about. And that goes with his his experience and his schooling and learning it on the streets and learning it in real time himself, right? So I always find that fascinating, though, when he goes, Nick, I would think that you might find your suspect somewhere at the victim's school or somewhere, and that's just not a great example, but I'm always intrigued because every time a lead that in a place of the investigation that I didn't think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. So chronologically, you cover the book, and then you get to the point where you start talking about Richard Allen, and especially in Today's the Day is the name of the chapter. and you discussed kind of how that was for you, that October 31st, 2022, and how you talked to the captain. So kind of explain in your own words, yeah, what was it like when they made an arrest?
Well, it was wild. And I wasn't, once bitten, twice shy. I wasn't going to get fooled again. And of course, this was a little bit different for me, because when information was coming out, or rumored to be coming out in this case, a lot of times you could do 5-10 minutes worth of work and figure out, nope, that's just a rumor, nothing's going to come about it. Or, oh, this is something that's legit. And is it connected to this case or not? That's another question. But with this one, I received a text from somebody in law enforcement in the state of Indiana, not Carroll County, but the text was, I was 2 hours north of my home, and I was doing some work for a nonprofit organization that I work with called the Porchlight Project. And I was looking at this cold case from Northwest Ohio, Nancy Eagleson. She was murdered 60 years ago. And the Porchlight Project, the nonprofit that I work with, we did some really great work on her case, because a big problem with her case, Fig, was that there was no physical evidence. It had been lost over the course of the decades. Of course, the sheriff's office had moved multiple times. Nobody could really explain why the physical evidence had disappeared. They had the sheriff's office did have an inventory list of what that physical evidence would have been, and it wasn't overly impressive. But keep in mind that was law enforcement in small town USA 60 years ago. And so one thing we did was, with the blessing of not just the blessing, the encouragement, the family wanted to exhume their family member, Nancy, their sister. And that's not cheap. And one thing I didn't know is that you can't just, next of kin say, yeah, we want to exhume our loved one. No, you got to get the court's permission to do so. And it was really great, because we were able to raise money through the Porchlight Project we organized the exhumation. We organized additional autopsies that could be conducted with today's technology and with today's experts. And the whole purpose of that, Fig, was there was no physical evidence. And after reviewing everything that I could get my hands on, I'm telling Porchlight and I'm telling the Eagleson family, I'm like, this exhumation is a great idea, because we had several experts tell us the chance of finding suspect DNA is next to none. Not an impossibility, but very close to an impossibility. And so we were sitting there saying, is this a case? It's going to be expensive. Is this something that we should take on? And I pushed it, and I said, yes, because we may find physical evidence that has nothing to do with DNA during the process of the exhumation and the additional autopsies. And they did. They found a bullet. So
Whoa.
Where we previously didn't have a bullet, we now have a bullet that we could match to the murder weapon if we ever find the right gun to compare it to. So I was busy working on that, and I'm eyeballs deep in that case, and totally checked out at Delphi on that day. And I get a text from a friend in law enforcement that says something to the effect of, insider baseball, there's been a big arrest, Delphi. And when you get it from somebody in law enforcement, that's different. And I thought, well, knowing that I was trying to balance out what I knew. And I, again, this is what we do with this case, right? Immediately my head's spinning and my thoughts are running wild, and I'm starting to try to fill in the blanks myself. And why am I getting this information from this source? And what could that mean? And so, yeah, I finished up what I was doing. I raced home. And then when I saw Becky Patty post, "Today is the day," in a very different manner than the wishful thinking "today's the day" that she used to post leading up to this, I knew this was going to be the biggest thing for the case that we've seen in all of this time, in 5.5 years.
Right. We've known about different suspects, Well, I don't even think they use the term suspect to anyone, but I guess our, as being in the public persons of interest, you know, like the Daniel Nations, the people like that. But there's never been an arrest before. So to me, that's huge, an actual arrest. And I'm hoping they have something. So do you think Rick Allen is the guy on the bridge?
Well, I've done multiple interviews and I've kind of dodged this question because for good reason. And here's the reason why. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be the one determining guilt or innocence. And there will be more intelligent, more dialed in individuals than me. And these are going to be people that are going to get different information than what we currently sit here with. I'm not trying to defend Richard Allen. I think that it's he looks awfully guilty. The evidence seems to point to him. He is the only one that's been arrested, as you said, and he's the only one that's being charged with this crime. So I prefer to sit back and watch how it unfolds and plays out. I'm really curious though, and I know everybody else is. I'm really curious as to what we will learn in this trial once it does get to the courtroom. But I'm also trying to not set myself up for a huge disappointment because that's what this case has been at times, right? We think, oh, there's going to be an avalanche of information and we're going to be able to fill in all the blanks and get all the answers we were looking for. And that avalanche never comes. So I do worry a little bit that it took so long to find. If it is so easy and laid out the way it seems to be, I'm a little worried that it took so long to find the killer that was, you know, right in their own backyard. But to their defense, that's what they were telling us all along. We believe he's hiding in plain sight. We believe that he's probably local or has ties to Delphi. And you know, it's a wait and see kind of situation.
Yeah. So what do you think did take them so long? I mean, I know you kind of hinted on it a little bit. I mean, we do have some information that it seemed like who was ISP? They were kind of blaming the FBI, and then FBI came out with a statement and said, no, it had nothing to do with us. But there seemed like some information was either misplaced or it was considered unfounded, which is an interesting term to me. When there's a conservation officer who I guess spoke to Rick Allen at a grocery store, which seems like a weird place to meet someone to conduct an interview. He scribbled down some notes, and yeah, just I don't know. Do you have any just from other cases when things like this happen, where there's someone who is maybe either a witness or someone who claims to be there, and then they don't get arrested for years and years, and then all of a sudden they do? Do you have any insight on kind of maybe what? And we could speculate here a little bit because we don't know what the hell happened.
Right. And I think that immediately most people, their gut reaction is, well, it's Delphi, Indiana, it's Carroll County, Indiana, it's small town USA. They didn't know what they were doing, but we got to push that aside right away because Indiana State Police they were the face of this investigation. Tobe Lesenby has said in at least one interview that Carroll County is the lead. If he had to, and he does say, he pushes back on that question, you know, when asked who is the lead, he says, well, if I had to, you know, if we have to name a lead, it happened here in Carroll County. We are the sheriff's department. So yes, we would be the lead in this, but then you have the FBI as well. And the FBI needed to be involved because of the amount of tips that were coming in. Frankly, Indiana State Police couldn't handle that. Carroll County couldn't handle that. So you get the people over at the FBI involved. And really, Fig, I think that if we have to try to pinpoint a problem without being able to peel back the curtain and see how everything was going behind the scenes, I think we probably have a situation of just too many cooks in the kitchen. Not to say that we shouldn't pull all of our resources and get everybody involved in such a big case, but I think there was probably too many cooks in the kitchen. We do know that there was infighting by the investigators. We saw that play out leading up to the sheriff's election. So And oftentimes too, it's not uncommon for there to be infighting amongst the ranks and even amongst the different agencies involved, especially when you have a case that drags on. You know, the investigators, the women and the men that are investigating this case, they're human like the rest of us. They, you know, and some of them wear their hearts on their sleeves like the rest of us. And I'm sure that emotion can, you know, we know emotion can take you over. And I'm sure that at times that they were probably arguing and maybe even investigating with their hearts instead of their heads. And that's so human. That's so human. And look, it's not the right thing to do, but I'm glad that that happens. You know, let's have some heart. And you know, and that's part of some of the things that I point out in the book, that I think one thing that gets lost on, you know, true crime's become this big fascination, and everybody's very involved in it these days. And it hasn't always been that way. But one thing that I wanted to remind everybody with this book is that a lot of investigations are as such, but this one in particular, it's a battle of good versus evil. It truly is. And it's having the hope and the resolve to sit there and believe that good trumps evil. And that if we just hang on together and if we work together, it will, and it always will. And so that's a big part of the book as well. The whole meeting him talking in a grocery store or wherever they spoke, part of me wonders if he was talked to at the CVS where he works. It seems to me like he's trying to explain away why he would be there, but doesn't really want to go to, you know what I mean? It's like when you're a kid and you know you're guilty of something and you know there's a punishment coming your way and you want to get ahead of it. Don't you kind of go and confess to the more casual parent, the less strict one, and you're like, hey, I might have done something like this, or you might get a call from my teacher because, and you go to the nicer one, right? The less strict one. And that's what I feel like here. like Richard Allen's like, oh, I'll talk to this person so it's on record, and if they ever do approach me, I can say, well, I told you why I was there, and I reported it to police, and it doesn't look so straight up like he called the hotline or went into the police station and asked to speak with Tobe Lesenby or the lead detective. None of that happened. So so he if he is the guy, he was hiding in plain sight, as they say, and seems to be an oversight but it's also difficult to believe that he would be they had a roster. They were trying to put together a roster, and this is an easier way to sort of describe this. I'm always really fascinated by the crimes, murders that take place at a business. And the reason why is because you can typically use surveillance footage or the cash register itself, and you can start to put together a list of everybody that entered that building that day on the day in question. It's very difficult to do that on a trail system, basically a nature out there in a park-like setting. But in the businesses, what they do is for every transaction or for every person they see on surveillance, they're trying to put a name to that person. And what was their purpose of being there? What did they purchase? When did they arrive? When did they leave? Because these people are not just suspects because they were there, but they're also witnesses. What can we learn from each one of them? And so they were attempting to do this all the while here at the Monon High Bridge and the trails that surround it, and basically put together this roster of people and fill out that roster. And I don't believe, we sit here and we think that maybe they know everything. My belief, Fig, is that Richard Allen's name did not appear on that roster. And we know that that's probably the case, but I would believe that there's probably other people on that roster that they've not filled in the name either. And that makes those are the ways that an investigation gets complicated very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And as a business consultant, I see that communication issues, it's very common. I do consulting for a business of 5 people up to 80,000. And when I go in there and there's $1 million issues, and whether it's a quality defect or whatever it is, communication is always one of the contributing factors to the root cause of a problem. I'd say 99% of the time. So it's not so surprising that there was a mistake made and had to do with a communication error. So I'm not so surprised by that. And we kind of, oh, go ahead.
And in the book too, I kind of talk about the difficulty with some of these, let's call them suspects, right? The people that were named publicly by the public as, hey, this is the suspect, or my theory says that this guy did it. And, there's been all these people that have been named throughout the years. And I point out that part of the problem, especially when you have multiple agencies investigating the case, we do know that at times it looks like a certain agency had a preferred suspect and maybe another agency had a different suspect. We can deduce that based off of the words and who submitted for search warrants and such. And so the problem with those suspects, as I point out in the book, and not so much Richard Allen, is that a lot of them made for good reasonable doubt versus the other suspect, with the Anthony Klein and Kegan Klein. The problem with them was that if you were going to charge one of them, you better charge both of them, because the other is the reasonable doubt for the other one. And then the problems with so many people have had a big problem with moving on from Ron Logan in this case. And a lot of people have said that Ron Logan is reasonable doubt for other suspects. So it's, we have the luxury of sitting here from afar and not having to have done the actual boots on the ground investigation and to fully understand and comprehend the complications that were probably going on with the investigation.
Yeah. And it seems interesting because whoever was there that day, right? You have to start there in an investigation. So I get people, when there's not a whole lot of information, they'll fill in gaps and they'll assume who the person of interest is or who the suspect is. They make these assumptions, but as new information comes in, so I learned this I'm somewhat of a business scientist. I have to do certain things, a lot of trials and studies, and I know that when new information comes in, I need to reassess everything. I learned something new. So a big, I guess, milestone in the case was this arrest. So I was kind of, all bets are off. Like, forget what I knew before about different persons of interest and those things. Like this is something big. This is new data I need to take in. I can't just double down on my person of interest and ignore it and making an excuse saying, oh, well, they're just corrupt or they're incompetent. They don't know. I know better than them. And we know so little information about this case. We don't know the actual weapon that was used. We don't know the cause of death. We assume these things. We don't know the exact timeline. Like you said, we don't know everyone who was there that day. We don't know all these things, and law enforcement does. So I'm going to divert to their expertise right now. And yeah, I'm sure not all of them are perfect human beings, but no one is. In all the organizations I go into, there's that all over. But I'm confident that if they made an arrest, they know what they're doing. But yeah, I was going to ask you, there is these other things that get put out there. I think McClellan stated it, where there could be these other actors or more involved. And you said that the case is not really done yet or closed yet, which it's not. So kind of, what are your thoughts on next steps for this case?
Well, the next steps, one, I'm really curious as to why maybe there's not been a confession yet. And if there were to be, what would that information include? I do kind of push and nudge Richard Allen in the book to suggest, hey, if there's some other guilty party here, or somebody that covered for you or whatever, if you're looking for an opportunity for some kind of leniency, now is that opportunity. That window is closing, sir, and it will eventually be closed for good. So if he wants to try to save himself a little bit, now's the time to start talking. But you know what's wild about these cases, though? It's not uncommon at all that the perpetrator ends up being somebody that was not on the radar, was not in the police file. We covered the Tony Muncie case, which is a case that was Central Ohio, a teenage boy who was murdered in the early 80s. And that case seemed to be as cold as they could be when we covered it. And in fact, there was almost nothing about the victim, Tony Muncie, on the internet when we covered it on True Crime Garage. And so at the very least, we thought, well, now this kid has a digital footprint. And if you stop talking about these cases, they don't go anywhere. So we wanted to try to advance his case because it looked as cold as can be. All the while, we didn't know that they were working very diligently behind the scenes, very quietly on this cold case for years and never gave up on it. And they did. They solved it a couple years after we covered it on True Crime Garage. And we had a big batch of nasty suspects that we named on True Crime Garage. And ain't one of them, it was somebody that police had never heard of, and never suspected in Tony's case, until the very end. This was a guy that they stumbled upon toward the end, and then the DNA ended up confirming their suspicions, but they had no reason to tie the victim to the suspect, because, and that's what you have here with Delphi. It would appear, based off of what we've been told and what's been released to the public, that Richard Allen has zero connection to the two victims. And other than the fact that they ended up being in the same place. And I believe, and I've said this on True Crime Garage from almost day one on Delphi, when we started covering it, was that I felt like that bridge, that was the trap. That was the spider's web. That the killer, whoever intended to do these evil deeds, determined, this is my spider's web, and I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch and wait until that fly goes into the trap, and then that I will corner the victims, and I'm creating an advantage for me and a huge disadvantage for my potential victim. And when you start to, and that's really how this thing played out. And when you really start to analyze that and think like that and try to get into the headspace of a person that would do something like that, and then you make the arrest 5.5 years later, and the guy turns out to be 50 years old approximately. And, and I'm sitting, I read, my favorite thing to read are these retired FBI agents, their books that they come out with, because I love the way that they think and the way that they profile a case. They profile the victim, they profile the would-be offender, the unidentified offender, they profile the landscape, the situation, what was going on in the area at the times. They profile everything about a case and try to come up with ways to figure out amongst the masses who was the most likely type of person to commit this crime. And one thing that I've learned over the years, Fig, that the average age of a serial killer, of a male serial killer, is approximately 28 years old, while they're active. The average age of a first kill for a serial killer is 27. And when we talk about someone like Richard Allen casting this net, setting this trap and waiting, and it really appears that there was a good deal of planning involved. And we know that these types, they fantasize, they have the you know, violence and sex and everything's all wrapped up into one nasty little package for these guys. And they have these fantasies that they play out in their head over and over and over again. Well, it's just like when you write a movie or you're casting for a movie, you've got the story. That's the fantasy. Now you need to fill out your roster. You need your cast members to fill in. He already knows in his fantasy who the killer's going to be, who the aggressor's going to be. That's him. That's his fantasy. Now he needs someone to play the role of the victim. And when you start looking at it that way and you see somebody of his age and the way that this crime is, the aspects of this crime, I'm not saying that it's a huge probability. I'm saying that it is certainly a possibility, given the average age of when these guys are active and the average age of a first kill. There's a lot of years in between for somebody like Richard Allen, and I just don't know. I mean, it's a head scratcher when to believe that somebody just woke up and did this one time.
Yeah, I'm interested if he did commit other crimes. I guess we need to know if he committed this crime first, but I'm sure they ran his DNA through the database to see. But yeah, it seems pretty late in the game to be starting. But
well, and
yeah,
you know, we know with the April Tinsley's case with Miller, who was arrested, it was a one only. You know, he only abducted and killed one victim. Thankfully, we do know from his own admissions, from what he told law enforcement after the fact when he confessed to killing her, that he did go out on many, many, many other times, and for whatever reason decided not to abduct somebody, or something just told him, you know, today's not the day to do this. And you know, it's haunting to hear. It's like that what is that Ozzy Osbourne song, you know, I wait for the kill but it doesn't seem right. And you know, again, that's another weird case where his name was not in any of the police files. That was a huge Indiana investigation, and it was only through DNA that led them to him many years later.
Mhm.
I believe his mother had covered for him, as a complete side note. That's an example of a case that is solved, adjudicated. The man is in prison and will be for the rest of his days, and yet we still have questions about what happened and how it all went down. And even though we get all of his words, like I said, I believe his mom kind of covered for him, and I believe his mom knew that he did it without him telling her. But again, that's what we see with these cases. There a lot of times, unfortunately, there is always a mystery left to them, and that's why I say to everybody, you know, read the book, but when this trial starts, don't get your hopes up. Don't go over the moon about what you think you're going to learn. There will be some mystery left to this at the end of the day, even if he does decide to confess.
Right. So could you see this, my screen right here?
Yeah.
Okay, because I remember you saying about giving the spiderweb analogy about this case. So when this is Richard Allen's defense team put out this press release, I'm like, oh, Nick was right. Look at this, as he often did. He had walked. So this is his own defense team saying that Rick Allen was often out at the trail. So it made me think of what you said. It's hard for me because sometimes I don't know if I talked to you or you said it on the show, but somewhere you talked about this. And I thought of you when I read this, that, oh, as he often did, where he was waiting for someone to go into a trap, where that's why because people will say, well, why didn't he attack the other girls that he saw that day? Well, they didn't go into a spider web. That's why he didn't attack them.
Right. And maybe his fantasy too included two victims, and he was looking for, you know, that's their goal most of the time, is to live this fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the person responsible for this case went to the trails often, knew that was their trap, and probably had a kit with them carried a kit with them for when, and I hate to use these types of words because it seems so cold, but kept the kit with them for when the opportunity presented itself. You know, I think he had been waiting to do this for a while, and and I like that his defense team is like, it's like, oh well, he went there all the time, and he did, you know, didn't kill anybody those visits,
Right.
so this points to him being innocent. No, I wouldn't suggest that he went there all the time points to his innocence.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was kind of a mistake on their part to mention that, but I thought it was interesting.
And he's got good attorneys. Like,
oh yeah, yeah.
You know, we watch this stuff, read this stuff, and critique it a little bit, but it's weird. Like, I see flaws already in the prosecution and in the defense, but I also see a lot of good work being done by both sides. So I think what we're going to end up with, look, you got to get it right. You can't screw the pooch here, because like we said, there's been a lot of people that's been looked at. This is the only guy that they've ever arrested. This is the only guy being charged with these homicides. So you want, as much as you want the prosecution to get it right, you want the defense to get it right too, because there are appeals in this country. And you know, I don't want to get into a whole death penalty discussion here because I'm neither for or against the death penalty. I don't want to get into my weird opinions of the death penalty, but one opinion I do have is if you have it, you should probably use it, because that's the only way that it would be effective, if that's what you're telling your people that you govern, that this is an effective way, an effective manner of law and order. So if you have it, use it. And I was really disappointed, and I know the April Tinsley family was as well, that in the Miller case, when he was caught and I said confessed, he confessed after they had his DNA. They had him dead to rights before he confessed. And unfortunately, I thought the state of Indiana took the easy way out and did a life sentence for him. And I know Tinsley's family was very upset. They told prosecution, we want the death penalty. This man killed an 8-year-old girl. And then think about what he says in his confession. He went out multiple times with the idea of abducting and killing another girl and just never did it for whatever reason. But that tells us that if this man is breathing and he's free, he's a danger to society. So I'm hoping here, however this thing plays out, I'm hoping that this is one of the most heartbreaking cases I can think of, especially in recent history. And I'm hoping that the punishment is as severe as they possibly can get it to.
I'm with you 100%. With your experience in looking at other cases, and I don't know how many other arrest warrants you've looked at. I have a friend who's a chief of police locally, and he's also an attorney, so I get to bounce things off him, but I live in a different state and I know things are different. But about the amount of evidence that's in the Richard Allen arrest warrant, the PCA arrest warrant, I asked him, hey, do you normally on an arrest warrant put all of your evidence in there? And he said, not if you're a good investigator, you won't put everything in there. So what are your thoughts? Does the PCA, does it look light to you? Do you think, is it common that they're only going to put the bare minimum in there and then withhold evidence?
Well, so yes, your friend is absolutely right. And I it doesn't need my approval because he's actually working in that world. But the other thing though, too, Fig, is you can present this arrest warrant and get it turned down and then go back another time with additional information. So it's hard to say if it looked light, to the judge that signed off on it. It didn't. It looked appropriate. I thought that it included, and this is intriguing to me because let's say it was rejected, and we don't know. There's a chance that there was another arrest warrant put together that was rejected, and then this is the one that they get pushed through. But one thing that I found interesting was it did look to be speculative. There's a lot of speculation in that arrest warrant, where they're saying, you know, here's these things that may or may not connect Richard Allen to these murders. Here's these things that do not exclude him from being the perpetrator, but do not definitively include him either. So I thought it was a little heavy on the speculation. I have presented it to some individuals in law enforcement or previous law enforcement experience, and while they all think that he's the guy, they've all said to me, they're like, I hope they got more than this.
Right.
You know, just saying, hey, a little nervous with this thing going to trial. Now, Richard Allen's own words did make things very difficult for him and for his defense team when he said, look, that piece of land where the girls were found, where their bodies were found, and we've not been told a lot, Fig, but one thing we have been told multiple times is they were killed where they were found. He says, I've never been to that piece of land, even though I've been to the trails often, his own words, never been to that piece of land where they were found. And, I've never loaned my gun to anyone ever. And they have, scientific evidence that is telling us that in all likelihood, his gun was on that property at where they were found and on the day that, likely on the day that they were killed. So science is telling us that he's probably the guy, and he didn't offer much of any wiggle room from it. Would be a whole lot different situation, I think, Fig, if we were sitting here and Richard Allen had said, I loaned my gun out all the time. Anybody that wanted to borrow it, I'd let them borrow. I mean, even if they can't produce people that have borrowed the gun or used the gun for whatever reason, it still creates that room, that wiggle room for reasonable doubt. Or to say, that piece of, I can't tell you if I've ever been on that piece of land or not. I walk the trails and I go to that area all the time. I've walked all over there. I can't say if I've been on that piece of land, yes or no, with any level of certainty. So he didn't leave himself much wiggle room. And that's why I think that if there was anybody else involved and he wants some leniency, now's the time to tell your defense team and build your case around that. Because some of these cases, and that's not what we have here, but we do know in some cases that, like the Miller case in Tinsley's case, that guy was guilty. That trial came down to what would the sentence be, not is this guy guilty or not.
Do you mind answering a few fan questions? Some of your fans, I
would love some fan questions. Okay.
So I let people know that I was doing this, and a bunch of people, I love True Crime Garage, are my favorite. So it was cool to read. So the first one is very blunt. Do you have any inside information or new information about Delphi that you would be able to share?
That's kind of a two-parter. In the second part of that question, it makes it a no. I don't have anything that would blow anyone's skirt up, but I do have some information that I've not seen out there, but I don't feel comfortable discussing it. Look, True Crime Garage, we try to help these cases, especially the cold ones, even if it's just two guys in a garage talking about it, putting out good vibes. If that's as little as we can do, at least we're doing that. But I don't want to risk mucking up anybody's investigation or prosecution, especially after I know you probably experienced this, Fig, and I know a bunch of your viewers probably experienced this too. There were some dark days in this investigation, man. There were some days where I felt there was no hope, where I thought we're never going to know who did this. There will be no justice for these two girls that were taken away from their families forever. So yeah, I don't want to go back to those dark days.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate it. Don't say anything you're not comfortable with, and we don't want to jeopardize this case. And if it was too juicy, I would have edited it out anyway. So, okay. Next question from AB. Is there anything you now know about the case after having written this book that you didn't know before covering it on True Crime Garage?
That's a great question, as was the last one, but I can't say 100% that there was anything that I learned from writing the book that I didn't know when we covered it on True Crime Garage. What I can say is I know that there are things that I wrote in the book that I did not say on True Crime Garage. And part of that was not just it's less about learning new information and more about reviewing what we have. Like, so you know, a lot of the documents, a lot of the legal documents and court documents, we've just discussed the arrest warrant, we've discussed some search warrants and things of that nature. Some of these are pretty cumbersome documents. And with the Kegan Kline interview, I think that thing's like 200 pages if you have the transcript of that. And so what it was when writing the book, and it was reviewing a lot of these things at length again and in depth again. And yeah, I mean, it's those types of documents are just like any really brilliant, beautiful painting. The more times you look at it, the more you're going to see. And so, yeah, I think that there was probably some of that. And if it was, it came from those documents. The Kegan Kline transcript is very, and look, I know there's a lot of people that say they've read it. It's 203 pages or something like that. I know this to be fact, Fig. There are a lot of people that say that they've read War and Peace. It's just too big and too damn long. Most people haven't read it. You know, so just like the Kegan Kline transcripts, I've had everybody and their brother has told me that they've read them. I end up in conversations about the transcripts, and they're lost. So not everybody's read it. It's not a quick read. It's very dry, because you're reading this kind of conversation where they're playing along with him for most of the interview. But I encourage people to read that. You want to talk about learning something that maybe I didn't know when we did True Crime. I had read that thing, but reading it for the third and fourth time, how gross and disgusting his crimes that he did commit, right? Let's take away the Delphi case and his, you know, rumored connection or whatever to the Delphi homicides. The crimes we know that he did commit, the crimes that he was charged with and will be adjudicated, are incredibly gross and incredibly scary. He, you know, this is the stranger that is after your children. And you know what the keyhole to your home was, your safe and secure home? It was a phone. It was social apps. It was online activity. He snuck in right in through the keyhole to your home, my home, and everybody else's home. And he preyed on your children. And he not only asked these little girls to make videos and pictures of themselves, he's going, do you have a little sister? Do you have a friend? Do you have a friend that maybe would want to talk to me? That is scary shit, and so scary, Fig, that I have some friends that have daughters and sons of roughly that same age of the girls that he was preying upon. And I reminded mom and dad, I'm like, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation to have with your kids. Please talk to them. Tell them that these people exist. Tell them that Justin Bieber looking model guy with a six-pack and a Lamborghini talking to him online is probably not a Justin Bieber looking guy with a six-pack and a six-pack abs and a Lamborghini. Probably not that dude. Go take a look at a picture. And I even told a couple of my friends, I'm like, I want you to show your daughter who's got crazy online activity going on that you're concerned about. Show her a picture of Anthony Schatz, and then show her a picture of Kegan Kline and say, that's the guy that you're actually talking to. Just so reality sets in, because again, it wasn't just good enough for him to get a victim, but then it's like, oh, who can I get my current victim to to help me network to a new victim? Do you have a sister? Do you have a little sister? Do you have any friends that would want to talk to me? And his crimes are very bizarre to me too, because a lot of times these online predators, some of them want to actually meet the person that they're talking to, the person that they catfish, and others just want to victimize them through online activity, get videos of them, pictures of them. Mind you, parents, they're sharing these things with each other. These pedophiles are sharing these things with each other. But Kagan was different because he was preying on people that lived around him. And in some cases, it was girls that he either knew the girl or knew their family member or their families. So he was purposely targeting people that, if he wanted to, he could arrange for a meeting. He wasn't living in Indiana and preying on girls in Hawaii or London, England, or Canada. No, he's preying on girls that were in his, he could hop in a car and meet them at any time. And so that's the reality of it. And that's the scary shit of it. And yeah, if anything, read that transcript, mom and dad, and then have that uncomfortable conversation with your children. You want to be comfortable, go home and sit on the couch and do nothing. Let's get uncomfortable and let's open the eyes of these children who can get fooled by these predators online.
Yeah, it was enlightening, and just to see how they work and how they network. It's disgusting. There's a lot more involved than I thought. So reading that, it was enlightening, and they'd both pretend to be a female, and then someone else, another child predator, would pretend to be a female, and they would talk that way. I mean, yeah, it's definitely enlightening.
And not everybody would know this. But this is one of the quick ways that I can figure out in a conversation early on, if somebody's actually read the transcript, was it's not just all Anthony Shots. He wasn't just catfishing with Anthony Shots. It was with Emily Ann, and he had multiple personalities, let's call it, these fictitious characters that he created to trick these other individuals into opening up and talking and sharing with him.
All right. Let's move on to the next question. So we've got 3 more questions and we'll kind of wrap it up. We have Jeremy, and I'm going to paraphrase, but are all true crime people crazy, or is it just a Delphi crowd?
That's a double yes.
Yes,
they
yes.
are all crazy in the Delphi crowd. No, they're not all crazy. And not all the Delphi people that were so intrigued by this case, not all of them are crazy either. It's like with anything else. True crime's very popular right now. People are intrigued by it. People are reading more, watching more. There's, when I was a kid, there wasn't very many true crime shows. There hardly ever was one. And Dateline wasn't even a regular thing when I was a little kid. But it's every week now, and these stories are all over the place. You can't turn on the TV nowadays without there being true crime. Hell, the finest doctors in our land, Fig, Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, are even talking. And I hope you hear the sarcasm in my voice.
Yeah, yes.
They even talk true crime on their little shows. But if you have a large enough crowd, there's going to be crazy ones in it. Right. Just like everything else. There are crazy people that watch the NFL. There are crazy people that are wrapped up in politics. That if you get enough people in one room, right, you're going to have a handful of crazy.
Well, and that's why it's good to read your book. I mean, there's another book that came out on Delphi. It was just pure silliness. It was a few months ago, and it was just nonsense. So it's good to have resources and people you trust. So True Crime Garage, your book on Delphi, and hopefully me for the most part when I do stuff. So Lisa from Australia says, why do you think the Delphi case has attracted international attention?
Well, and to expand on that last one a little bit and what we were just talking about, and to kind of sift through all the malarkey out there about this case. One thing that was very important to me to include in the book was an index so people can quick reference a lot of the things that are in the book, and also source information. This book is loaded with source after source after source of where I got this information. Of course, it does include a lot of my own speculation, and my thoughts and speculation that I had at the time when I was learning different information. But to answer this question here, why the international fascination? I think it's just what we talked about at the top of the show, where on the surface, you got the guy's voice, you got his image, you got video of him, and then you dig just underneath that surface and realize, they've practically told the public nothing. Where it looks like they would have everything, they really have nothing. It's human nature to want to bridge that gap, and that is a huge gap, my friend. So it left a lot of room for speculation. And I think too that many people like myself believed in the early days of this investigation, this would be solved. There'd be an arrest rather quickly, and there wasn't. And I think that fueled the fire more and more, and stoked the fire the longer the investigation dragged on.
And I looked at it. I think what I was interested is, it seems like Libby was setting us up for an assist. Like she threw the alley oop. Like she recorded video of the person. So who's going to come in and slam dunk it? Like she knew something was wrong. I feel like she did. She's very intuitive. She got this guy for us, for the public, to identify this person. So it seemed almost like a calling for help, that she knew what was going to happen, something bad. And here it is for everyone. Let's do a layup now. So who's going to catch the pass and do it? And hopefully it was law enforcement. So there's some like obligation. It's weird that I feel someone has to do it from the public. Someone has to try. And we know so little. It's very difficult.
Well, and you're hitting on something there, Fig, that is really, man, when you sit and try to think about it, it's mind-blowing. Think about how difficult it was for them to get to this arrest. Had Libby not done what she did that day, been brave enough and smart enough to do that day, I don't think we would have ever got an arrest in this case. I mean, look, it took with video and a recording of the guy that she provided to us, like you said, the alley-oop. It took 5.5 years to make an arrest. I don't sit here with any confidence going, oh yeah, they would have arrested somebody without this information. I mean, come on. This guy, and you know what? She saved lives because, like I said earlier, I have a very difficult time believing that this type of offender would not go out and attempt something again of similar nature. But guess what? He didn't. Why? Because he was scared to death. His picture was on the news. His voice was on the news. So he got stuck, and she stuck him. And we owe her and Abby a lot. They saved lives. They protected an entire community.
100%. Well said. Glad you said that and put it like that, because I'm with you 100%. So the final fan question we'll go through is, and I want to tell this person first, enjoy the current book, but people are already asking, is there going to be another book? What's the next book going to be about? I think it's just because they enjoyed your first one so much and they want more from you. So is there any plans for more?
Well, so I was told this I found to be shocking. When I was shopping the book, I was trying to sell it, trying to get it published. And I could have self-published it, but I wanted the book to have some street cred, and the only way that it was going to have any credibility, I felt, was for it to be published. So I kind of decided after I had finished writing it that, you know what, if it doesn't get published, I'll just tuck it away somewhere and it'd go unread. and I was lucky enough to get involved with Wild Blue Press. But when I was shopping it, I had got rejected by a couple of publishers, and the reason being is that it was unsolved. And in fact, I was told that, we, such and such publisher, we don't like to do unsolved true crime books. Just wait for it to be solved and come back to us. And I felt like such an idiot, Fig, because I'm sitting here, I'm being told this, and it blew my mind, because when I'm being told this, I turn and I look behind me to my bookshelves behind me, and it's filled with unsolved books. I'm like, I find the unsolved cases more intriguing than the solved ones a lot of times. And I thought, who wouldn't be interested in this story? And I'm getting told no, because it's unsolved, and must be something wrong with me to have all these unsolved case books here. But so I am eager to start working on another one. I got a few different ideas, but I gave that rambling story to because most of my ideas involved unsolved cases. And I think that's what I'm going to stick with, because that's where my fascination is, and I can put together a better story based off of my fascination and my enthusiasm about a specific case. And so I got a couple ideas. I got one that's very weird, and I would love to I'm going to do some book signings here in June, and I'm going to do them at some beer companies in Ohio. And so my idea is get together, sell some books, sign some books in the afternoon, early afternoon. And then they're going to be at brewing companies. So let's stick around and have some true crime conversations and some drinks together, friends. And a story that I'm dying to tell is there's a killer that he passed away here in Ohio years ago. And in fact, he killed a teenage girl in the 70s. And the case went unsolved for a very long time. And then years after his death, the police came out and said, this guy did it. And I've always been fascinated with that story, and in particularly with that individual that they said did it, because I think this guy probably that wasn't his only murder. And I'm working on trying to put together information and legit information that connects him to another murder that actually somebody else was convicted of. And the one that he got away with, and I say got away because he lived the rest of his life without having ever been charged for it. Somebody else was charged and taken to court and was acquitted in that case. So we're talking about a very dangerous individual, but one that not only evaded capture, but managed to get lucky enough that other people were arrested and tried for these other crimes.
That sounds super interesting. I definitely enjoy reading that and finding out more about it. So we'll kind of close it out here, but I want to know what is up with True Crime Garage. What are you guys up to these days? And then what are you guys covering this week? So what are you guys up to?
Well, like I said earlier, we're really excited because Off the Record came back. We had done Off the Record for a couple years, and to a lot of great listeners, a lot of people subscribed to Off the Record and listened for years, and we're sad when it went away. And we had told everybody, look, it's not really going away. It's just going to change venues. We're looking for a new venue for it, and we found a home on Apple Podcasts subscription. So it's right there in your feed. If you have an Apple product and you're listening to True Crime Garage on your Apple device, it's right there in your feed. You can sign up for it. I believe you can get a month free, or you can listen for 7 days free or something of that nature. So you can take it for a test drive before you spend your hard-earned money. And it's not expensive. It's about $5 for a month. And if you buy a full year subscription, you get a significant discount on there. So we're super excited that that is back, and we're pumping out off the record episodes. We just did a very interesting John Benet Ramsey discussion on there with some information that we fell into our laps. So that's exciting. And then this week on True Crime Garage, we cover the Bradley sisters. It's a missing persons case from Illinois, from Chicago, Illinois. They've been missing for over 20 years, 10 years old and 3 years old, been missing for over 20 years. And so that case is very interesting. We've also partnered up with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, an organization that we've worked with and supported for years, and longtime listeners of our show know that. We've partnered up with them because this week, in fact, Thursday, the 25th, is National Missing Children's Day. And so what we're hoping to do is raise some money for the NCMEC, for National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And if you want to give and donate to them, this is an organization that does bring kids home. And you know, we talk about predators and catfishing and things like that. They make free materials for parents. They've put together educational materials that you can review online, or you can request them to be sent to you so you can educate yourself as a parent and educate your children as well on these. So a really great organization, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And if you want to join us in our fundraising efforts, we have a page, and it is give.missingkids.org/True Crime Garage. If you go there, you'll see the money that we've already raised, and hopefully a lot of people will join us in that effort, especially this Thursday, National Missing Children's Day.
Awesome. I'll put that link also in the description, and also to your nonprofit. I think that would be great.
Yeah, the Porchlight Project. Thanks so much, Fig. I appreciate it. And I love getting the opportunity to come on and do a little video action here today with you. You know, we're primarily an audio only show, but we do have a YouTube channel. If you want to go and check out True Crime Garage that way, we got a lot of videos on there, and you can listen to most of our 600 some episodes on there. YouTube, it's True Crime Garage TV.
Yeah, well, I think the show that I did with you, the Off the Record, the rumor is it might be pushed out on Sunday. So that's for those who are interested in how that conversation went.
I've heard that rumor too. I think it's going to come out on Sunday, and it was a very interesting conversation, and you're going to get the captain involved. He's in on that conversation too. So Fig, it's been great talking with you today. Great talking with you for the Off the Record episode that we already recorded. And I look forward to talking to you again. You know, we're going to have a trial that will happen eventually. It's moving at a snail's pace, but you know, and that's one thing that I kind of try to remind people of too. There was this like 2-day period where I don't know what journalist it was or what news reporter it was, but they were the one that started pumping out the picture of Richard Allen looking malnourished and tired and thin and a little crazy in the eyes. And it felt a little bit like this person was purposely trying to catfish people on social, because people's reaction, look, people want their pound of flesh. This was a horrible crime, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, people were there. He or she posted this on Twitter and sent out the picture, and a lot of people responding with, you know, I don't care what happens to him. I don't care that he's losing weight. I don't care that he looks this way or whatever's happening to him health-wise. And the person that put it up there was with the response of like, it was like kind of gotcha journalism, right? Like with the quick response of, oh, well, you don't agree with innocent until proven guilty. Oh, you do understand he has a court date. Oh, you knew what the reaction was going to be.
Right.
You knew that that's the human reaction. Sorry that you don't like humans, but that's the human reaction. And so I simply replied on there, look, This dude, if he's experiencing some kind of cruelty that we are unaware of, that is detrimental to his health, mental or physical or both, he has the right to a speedy trial. Let's figure this thing out in the courtroom, and if he's not guilty, send him on his way. So let's not post these things and then attack the people that want to find somebody who's responsible and hold their feet to the flames for the consequences that they deserve.
Right.
So yeah, we will see a trial eventually, Fig, and we will either learn a bunch or maybe nothing at all. But if you want to have another conversation on off the record or here on your show, I'm happy to do that in the future. And I'm looking forward to June and doing some book signings. I'll post that on my Twitter feed, those locations, dates, and times. Hoping to sell some books and sign some books and meet some nice people. My Twitter handle is TCGNIC. My name's Nick Edwards. You can find the book on Amazon by searching my name, NIC Edwards, or the Delphi Murders. Like Fig pointed out, the Kindle version came out today, so we're excited about that. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's TCGNIC. And I'm looking forward to having more conversations with everybody.
Well, yeah, thank you for your time. And I'll put everything in the description for those who are definitely interested and want to follow up, but buy the book. It's great. I've gone through it twice, so probably going to do a third time. So thank you, Nick. I appreciate all of your time and have a good day.
Yep. Thanks so much. Take care.